Her name was Esther Coombe. 9 years an upper housemaid at Marsh House, and on the last morning they left a single shilling on the polished hall table to catch her. It sat there, gleaming in the cold light, waiting. She did not touch it. She did not weep. She dusted around it and went on with her work, because she had done nothing, and she believed still that doing nothing was a kind of armour. It was not. By noon she stood in the servants' hall before 7 faces. The cook, 2 maids, the footman, the housekeeper at the mistress's shoulder, and Mrs. Cordelia Marsh, who pointed at Esther and called the shilling stolen, though the shilling had never moved. "She goes without a character," Mrs. Marsh said, and let the words fall like a stone into a well. Let her explain the gap to the next house. No reference. No proof of 9 honest years. In England, in 1867, a servant without a character was a servant without bread. And there was worse coming. Because Mrs. Marsh sealed a letter that day, a letter about Esther, meant for Esther's next employer. A letter Esther was forbidden to open, forbidden even to read, and told to carry in her own 2 hands to the great house at Harrowmere, like a woman carrying her own sentence to the gallows. But Esther asked for one thing, the single thing no servant is ever permitted to ask, that when the letter was opened, it be read aloud in her hearing before she was turned from the door. And she stood at the servants' entrance of Harrowmere, letter held out, and waited to learn whether the Countess would say yes. If you believe quiet people read the fine print, this story is for you. Before we go on, subscribe and tell me in the comments the town you're watching from tonight. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. Culford, in Wiltshire. A small town of grey stone and wet green fields. Esther had come to Marsh House at 17 and stayed 9 years. £12 a year, paid slow. She rose in the dark and laid the fires. She knew the creak of every stair and the trick of the sticking window on the landing. When the old master took ill in his last winter, it was Esther who sat up with him. Esther who read to him when his eyes failed. Esther who was owed back wages for that nursing and never once asked for them, because it did not seem the sort of thing you charged for. She could read. She could write a fair, clean hand. That mattered more than anyone in that house understood, because Nan, the cook, could not read a word. When a scullery girl left, it was Esther who wrote the girl's character in Nan's name. She had written a dozen of them. She had even written the housekeeper's once, when the woman's hand shook too badly to form the letters. So Esther knew the language. She knew what a character truly was. Let me tell you, because this is the whole hinge of it. A character is a letter, a reference. One sheet of paper that says whether a servant is honest, sober, clean, willing. And that one sheet decides everything. No character, no place. No place, the workhouse, or worse. It is the only paper in England that settles a woman's entire trade. And here is the cruelty stitched into it. That paper is written by the one person with the strongest reason to shade it, the mistress the servant is leaving. And the servant is never, ever allowed to read what it says. Esther knew the code. She knew that honest was the word that mattered most, and that a character which never said honest was a knife dressed as a kindness. She knew sober and clean in her person, and obliging. She knew which words, left out, would quietly cut a woman's throat. I had written a dozen characters for that house, she used to say afterward. It never crossed my mind I'd be undone by the one I couldn't read. The trouble had a name, and the name was Kitty Vane. Kitty was the mistress's favourite, pretty, quick to smile, and a thief. Small things went missing where Kitty worked, a spool of thread, a length of ribbon, coins from the marketing money. Mrs. Marsh saw none of it, because she did not wish to. And when the housekeeper found the marketing money short 1 week, it was not Kitty who was blamed. Mrs. Marsh called Esther in, docked her half-day holiday, docked a shilling from her wage to cover the shortfall. But the money was in Kitty's keeping that week, madam, Esther said, quietly. Are you calling Kitty a liar? No, madam. Then the fault is yours for letting it happen under your eye. A shilling, half a day. It seems small. It was meant to seem small. But it was the first stone laid in a wall, and Esther felt the cold of it and said nothing, and that was her mistake. She still believed the truth would speak for itself. The next stone came 3 days later. The shilling on the hall table, the honesty test, an old ugly trick. Leave a coin where a servant must pass it, and watch. If she takes it, she is a thief. If she leaves it, well, Esther left it. She saw it for what it was, and she left it gleaming there, and she was proud of that, God help her. Mrs. Marsh came down with the housekeeper at her side. She looked at the untouched shilling, and she smiled the way a cat smiles. Left it, did she? Mrs. Marsh said. Clever, too clever. A guilty woman leaves the coin to look innocent. That is not honesty, Mrs. Pole, that is insolence. Esther felt something turn over in her chest. 9 years, and there was no move she could make. Take the coin. A thief. Leave the coin. Insolent. The trap had no door. So for the first time, she answered back, plainly, in front of the housekeeper, so there would be a witness. You will write me my character when I go, madam, she said, as is my right after 9 years. I only ask that you write me down true. And then, looking her mistress full in the face, write me down for less than I am, madam, and one day you may be asked to read it aloud. The housekeeper's mouth fell open. You did not speak so to Mrs. Marsh. Mrs. Marsh went very white, and then very calm, and Esther, who had never been a fool, understood that she had just made an enemy who would not be content with a shilling any more. The last stone fell the next morning, the shilling on the table. The 7 witnesses. She goes without a character. Let her explain the gap to the next house. But Mrs. Marsh had learned Esther's own trick and turned it on her. She did not simply dismiss her. That would leave Esther free to seek another place. No, she had the footman, Ambrose, swear the shilling was stolen. She named it theft before them all. And then she said the thing that closed the door for good. You will not leave this place as a free woman seeking work. You are dismissed for theft, and if you flout your contract and go, I shall have the magistrate on you under the Master and Servant Act. Desertion. You may go to Harrowmere with the letter I give you, and no further, and you may pray they take you. Run, and you are a criminal. The Master and Servant Act. Esther knew it. Under that law a servant who broke her place could be gaoled, not fined. Gaoled, the master answered a broken contract with a lawsuit, the servant answered it with a prison cell. The law did not weigh the two of them the same. So there it was. Dismissed for a theft she never did. Forbidden to seek honest work. Handed a sealed letter she could not read, written by the woman who hated her, to carry to strangers. And told that if she stepped 1 inch off the path Mrs. Marsh had drawn, the constable would take her. Esther walked out of Marsh House with the letter in her hand, and did not weep until she reached the road. Now she had 23 days. 23 days until Michaelmas, the great hiring day when places were filled for the year. Miss it, and there would be no work till spring, and no work meant the workhouse, or worse, under that act, the name of runaway. There was a place in Culford called Sowerby's. A servants' registry office, 2 rooms up a narrow stair. Esther climbed it because she did not know where else to go. Inside, a dozen girls waited on a bench, and Esther learned in one afternoon exactly how rotten the whole trade was. A character could be bought. For 5 shillings, a full week's wage, a man behind a desk would sell you a letter praising a mistress you had never served in a house that did not exist. Girls borrowed characters from friends. Girls forged them. The whole market ran on paper that lied, because the honest paper was the one thing a wronged woman could never get her hands on. The man at the desk looked at Esther, looked at the sealed letter she clutched, and understood her at a glance. "Sealed against you, is it?" he said. "Don't waste it. Burn it, and buy a clean one. 5 shillings. I've a lady in Bath was very fond of you. I never served in Bath. You did today, if you like." Esther looked at the forged letters drying on his table, and she felt the pull of it, the easy lie that would feed her. Then she thought of the old master's hand in hers on his last night, and she thought of every true word she had ever written for Nan, and something in her set hard. "No," she said. "I'll not lie my way into an honest house." She went back to her cold room with the sealed letter still in her hand and sat with it on her knee by the last of the candle. And slowly, slowly, a thought came to her that she had never had before in all her years of writing other women's characters. This letter was not just her sentence. It was evidence. It was Mrs. Marsh's own hand, Mrs. Marsh's own words, sealed and witnessed. And there was one act the whole system was built to prevent, one lever no servant had ever been allowed to pull, not to steal the letter, not to forge one, but simply to make them read it aloud, in front of people, in the daylight, to force the woman who wrote it to stand behind every word and every silence. Esther turned the letter over in her hands. She could not open it, but she could carry it to a door and refuse to be turned away until it was opened in her hearing. So at first light she took the Harrowmere road, 11 miles on foot, the sealed letter buttoned against her heart. She would not go to the servant's door and hand it up and stand waiting to be judged by words she'd never hear. She would ask for the one thing forbidden. She reached the great house as the bell rang for morning. She stood at the door, letter held out, and said to the astonished footman that she would not give it up unless it were read in front of her. And word of the strange, still woman at the door began to climb the stairs, up and up, toward the cold, clear eyes of Lady Sabine, Countess of Harrowmere. The footman came down slower than he went up. His face had changed. Whatever he expected to find at the door, it was not a woman who would still be standing there, calm, when he returned. "Her ladyship will see the letter," he said. "And you." Esther followed him in. Her boots were grey with 11 miles of road. She did not look down at them. Lady Sabine sat by a tall window with the light behind her. She was near 50, thin, plain, dressed for a countess. Her eyes went over Esther once, top to boot, and then to the letter held out across the space between them. "You will not give it up," she said. "It was not a question. Not unless it is read where I can hear it, my lady. Most women in your place hand it up and hope." "I have written too many of them to hope, my lady." That stopped her. The cold eyes sharpened, and something behind them woke. "You write characters. For 9 years. For the cook? Who cannot? For the housekeeper? Once. I know every word that goes in, and I know the words that are left out to do the killing." Lady Sabine held out her hand. Esther gave over the letter at last. The seal broke with a small dry sound. The Countess read it once, to herself. Her mouth did not move. But at the second line something flickered, and at the third it flickered again, and Esther, who knew that letter better than the woman who wrote it, watched the flickers land exactly where she knew the silences were buried. "Sit," said Lady Sabine. "You will take a month's trial in this house. We will speak of the rest in its proper place." Esther sat. She did not weep then either. But her hands, folded in her lap, would not quite hold still. The proper place came a fortnight later. Lady Sabine had a way of making things happen without seeming to reach for them. A charity committee was got up, invitations went out, and to Mrs. Cordelia Marsh of Marsh House came a card in the Countess's own hand asking her counsel on the management of servants. For who in the county knew the running of a house better? Mrs. Marsh came in her best. She came certain. Esther keeping to the back rooms on the Countess's word, heard her voice climb the hall, bright, pleased, sure her judgment was sought. The long drawing-room was full that afternoon. County ladies. The vicar. The Harrowmere housekeeper, standing by the door, the same faces that decide, over tea, which women in a district may work and which may not. Lady Sabine had chosen her room well. She rose. The talk died. "Before we begin," she said, "there is a small matter of a character. I should like it read aloud." She held up the letter. Marsh's smile stayed, but it stopped moving. "Esther, read it. Your own hand or no, you may as well hear it in company, since that is the custom you were denied." Esther stood. She took the letter. Her voice was level, and it carried, "To whom it may concern. Esther Coombe was in my service 9 years. She is willing and obliging. She is clean in her person. She is quiet and does her work." She stopped. "That is all, my lady. That is all," Lady Sabine repeated into the room. Willing, obliging, clean, quiet, she let each word sit. "Mrs. Marsh, you wrote this?" "I did." The smile was gone now. 9 years and you found her honest?" A pause. One breath too long. "Aye, she was in my service." "You do not say honest. You say willing. You do not say sober. You say clean in her person. You do not say trustworthy. You say quiet." The Countess turned to the room. Every mistress here knows what a letter carries by what it leaves out. This one leaves out everything a woman needs to be hired anywhere in England. It accuses her of nothing at all. She turned back. "That, madam, is exactly how it was built to ruin her." The room had gone very still. Marsh's colour rose. "A mistress," she said, "need give no reason for what she writes." "Then you will give none now," said Lady Sabine, "and this room will judge the silence." No one spoke for her. The vicar looked at his hands. The county ladies looked at Mrs. Marsh, and she felt every one of them, and there was nowhere in that long, bright room to put her eyes. Lady Sabine let it hold. Then she reached to the table beside her and picked up a single shilling and set it down again where all could see it. "There is the matter of a coin," she said. Ambrose, the Harrowmere footman, opened the side door, and behind him came a second man in Marsh House livery. The footman Ambrose brought that day on a pretext of his own. He stood twisting his hat, and he would not look at his mistress. "Tell the room," said Lady Sabine, who put the shilling on the hall table at Marsh House. Ambrose swallowed. His place was in that answer, and he knew it. But the truth, that afternoon, cost less than the lie. "I did, my lady," he said. "I was told to. Left gleaming where she'd pass it, to see would she take it." His voice cracked. "She never touched it. I watched her not touch it, and then it was called stole all the same. Told to. By whom?" He looked, at last, at Mrs. Marsh. He did not need to speak the name. The whole room followed his eyes and found her. By the door, a young maid in good clothes had gone the colour of ash. Kitty Vane had come in her mistress's train, and now she stood with her hands knotted white, and no one had yet said her name, and she looked as though she waited for the axe to fall on it. It fell softer than that, and worse. Lady Sabine took up a second letter. "I have here another character," she said, "written by the same hand. For a maid named Kitty Vane. Kitty's breath caught. I will read it. A most honest, sober, trustworthy young woman. Faithful in every particular. I part with her with the greatest reluctance, and recommend her without reserve." She lowered the page. Every word Esther Coombe was denied, this girl was given. "And this girl," she said gently, "is the one from whose accounts the shillings truly went missing. Is she not, Mrs. Marsh?" Silence answered, and the silence was answer enough. The room understood in 1 minute what it had trusted all its life. The letter did not follow the honest woman, it followed the favoured one. The whole trade turned to glass in the light of the window, and everyone in it could see straight through. But Mrs. Marsh was not finished, and she had one weapon left. She lifted her chin. "You may make what theatre you please," she said. The woman left her place. "There is a summons out under the Master and Servant Act. Desertion and theft. She will answer to a magistrate, not to a drawing-room." A constable's note came to this house on Tuesday. Lady Sabine agreed. "I have it. Desertion," it says. She held up the first letter again, the character, the sealed thing, open now. "But here, madam, in your own hand, is her dismissal. You put her out of the house. You wrote it. You cannot dismiss a woman and then summons her for leaving. A servant turned off is not a servant run off. There is no desertion where there was a discharge." She looked round the witnesses. "And there is no theft where the footman has told us, before all these, who laid the coin. Your summons is dead paper. I will say as much to the magistrate myself, and I think my saying it will be enough." It was. Everyone in that room knew it was. A countess's word in the county did not need to be shouted. Mrs. Marsh stood a moment longer. Then she gathered her skirts and went, and Kitty Vane went stumbling after her, and the door closed on them both. No one rose to see them out. 6 months on, Michaelmas long behind, the light came clean through a tall window in a bright room at Harrowmere and fell on a writing desk, and on Esther Coombe bent over a ledger in a clear, sure hand. She kept the characters now. Every letter the house gave to a leaving servant, she wrote, and every one she copied fair into the book before it went, so that no woman ever again left Harrowmere unable to say what had been said of her. The words she wrote were honest words. Where a girl was good, she wrote good, and plainly. Where a girl was wanting, she wrote that too, but truly, with the door left open for mending. Nothing hidden. Nothing built to kill in silence. The ink dried on the page. Beyond the glass the park ran green down to the trees. In the small drawer at her right hand sat a single shilling, kept, not spent, a thing she looked at sometimes and then closed away. Word travelled, as word does. Mrs. Marsh could not keep a servant now. Her characters were laughed at even across the counter at Sowerby's, where the registry man had learned what her praise was worth and what her silence was. And so, one grey morning, a carriage Esther knew came up the Harrowmere drive, and Mrs. Cordelia Marsh was shown, of all the rooms in England, into the one where Esther sat with the ledger open. She had a maid leaving her. She needed a character written. She could not, any longer, be trusted to write one that would be believed. She had come, the words cost her, you could see them cost her, to ask Esther Coombe to write it for her. Esther set down her pen. She did not gloat. She had never been the gloating kind. "I'll write it," she said. "On my terms. The truth, whatever it is, and a fair copy kept in this book for the girl to read whenever she likes." Mrs. Marsh's mouth worked, but she had no other door to go to. She gave a small, stiff nod. Esther drew a clean sheet toward her and dipped the pen. Somewhere in the town below, they say, a maid named Kitty Vane was turned off her own place that season and seen walking the road with a bag. Her glowing letter worth nothing now that the house it came from was known. The paper that decides a woman's whole life ought to be a paper she is allowed to read. That is all Esther ever asked. It took 11 miles and a drawing-room full of witnesses to win it, but she won it. And she keeps it now, in a clear hand, for every woman who comes after. If you've ever been written down for less than you are, tell me the town you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels.